In this week's episode of Let's Talk About It, we are going to explore the question, is mentorship dead? And then we're going to review the formidable, the amazing show, The Queen's Gambit. You're here. You made it. Now let's talk about it.
Well, hello there, kind people.
Yo.
Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It. I'm Malcolm.
And I'm Micah. We're so glad you're here.
Yes, we are. How are you doing, my love?
Oh, actually, I'm doing pretty good today. And I'm grateful for that.
That's good.
As your eyebrows raise in surprise.
Well, another day in this panoramic that we're in.
Oh, no. Oh no. Y'all, it's important to double check your tweets before you post them.
Panoramic and pandemic are not the same thing.
But we've all had typos,
And we've all been in the middle of a panoramic.
Yes, we have. How are you?
I'm good. Christmas is close. It's going to be the weirdest Christmas ever.
Indeed.
But I'm with the part of my family that I got to choose.
Wow.
And I'm really excited about spending the holidays with you.
I was not ready for that.
I know you weren't.
I thought you were going to crack another joke, but that was actually really sweet.
Thank you.
I'm so glad I got to choose you as well. So,
what we talk about today, boo?
That's a great question.
I thought so too.
We've already answered it at the beginning of this episode. I'm excited because we finally finished watching The Queen's Gambit. And of course, like so many things that we finish, we want to talk about it with you. And we're going to begin with a spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
There's going to be some of those.
Spoiler alert.
But yeah, Malcolm, what would you say is your overall rating of the show?
Oh, we're going to start off with that, huh?
Yeah, just, throw out a blurb. Like, what would you say to somebody who was asking about the show?
Am I giving a rating or what am I doing?
Both.
But what's the other thing that I'm doing?
A rating and a blurb.
The Queen's Gambit is a story of a young woman who overcomes significant personal challenges to become the number one chess player in the world.
That was off the cuff too.
And in those moments, she not only finds victory, but she finds herself.
Okay. Wow.
I just got to throw that little movie tagline in there.
You have to.
So yeah, that's basically the plot.
That's it. There you go. The end.
So yeah, it's about a young woman who is orphaned in a set of horrific circumstances.
Yeah. Which, you find out throughout the show have been developing for quite a while.
Yes.
These circumstances.
Yes. And there she meets, what's the janitor's name?
So we also haven't said her name yet. It's Beth.
It's Beth.
Beth Harmon is the young woman who's orphaned, and Mr. Scheibel is the janitor at the orphanage.
Yes, and he teaches her how to play chess, and she's just immediately obsessed with the game. She sees it in her dreams. All she wants to do is play chess in a world where women are not normally allowed to play chess.
They are not.
And so, whether it's intentional or not, this janitor schools her in the ways of chess. She gets books and reads as much as she can stand. And she becomes quite good at it. Yeah.
And I think he was reluctant, of course, at first to teach her, not only because she was a girl, but she's a kid, and he's like, I got a job to do, and this is my calm space down here in this basement where I play chess. I don't want you in my space. But he immediately sees that she's got a knack for this game, and he decides to, like you said, teach her, take her under his chess wing.
Yes.
So there are some other elements,
yes, there are,
alongside of her obsession with chess. There's this green medication that they are giving to the young people in this orphanage, and we don't quite know exactly what it is. Beth's friend Jolene refers to, I think at one point she says, don't take them until you go to sleep. So I don't know if these are like...
Or ration them out,
Yeah. Take it easy on them. But this drug is, I guess, supposed to keep the kids calm while they're in the orphanage, but it's actually a key part of Beth's ability to imagine the chess plays. She actually sees the chessboard on the ceiling at night when she takes this medication. But the dark side of it is she becomes addicted.
Yes.
Very quickly.
Yes.
And we see that follow her throughout the storyline as well.
I mean, and you really see that she really, I don't know, would you describe her as an addictive personality?
It's interesting because there was also a moment where the journalist came into her home and tried to make implications that she's got some either psychosis or an addictive personality. I don't know if I would be that cut and dry. I think she went through quite a bit of trauma early in her life, and she was trying to find things to fill some pretty, empty feeling spaces. And I think the drug was a part of that, and chess was a part of that too.
So, we'll go just hit the highlights of the movie. She ends up getting adopted by a family who can no longer have children, and the wife is really passionate about inviting a child into their home. The husband is not
so much.
Long story short, the couple divorces.
Well,
whatever. They're not together anymore.
Mr. Wheatley decides to go on a work trip that he never returns from.
Yes. And without getting too deep into the minutia, but during this time, this starts the bond between Mrs. Wheatley and Beth. And by this time, Elizabeth has developed a reputation as a superior chess player in her area.
Beth is pretty baller, and she hasn't even made it through high school yet.
Yeah. And so she starts to do competitions, and local ones, then state ones, then national ones, where she's first of all a woman, which is rare. And then she's just dominating players that
just wiping them out.
And then so she kind of gets to the top of the US field. And it's time to beat this guy named Borgov, who is the number one chess player in the world from Russia, as they always are in all the movies.
That's true.
And the top sports person is from Russia, whether it's Mighty Ducks, whether it's Rocky, whether it's whatever.
Hollywood still considers Russia the epitome of America's enemy.
Absolutely. And so she plays him the first time, and she beats him, or he beats her.
Yes.
And so she has to really start the process all over again and go back to the local level and work her way back up. And along the way, she meets some people that she kind of doesn't build relationships with initially, but then it does later. And so she's doing all these international trips. And on one of these international trips, she goes to Mexico to play. And
she does.
What we didn't tell you guys is that her adopted mother has a serious alcohol problem.
She does.
Very serious alcohol problem. And one day after one of Beth's matches, she comes back to the room and her mother's dead.
Yeah. I'm sitting here like, I mean, some things happen in between there, but we're hitting the highlights.
And so this affects her. She has to figure out, how she's going to live, how she's going to survive. She's making pretty good money doing chess, and her mother was not working. And they pretty much devoted all their time to her doing these tournaments and making money. But still, it's a concern. So she tries to call her stepmother's ex-husband, who is not helpful in the least.
Mr. Wheatley is not helpful.
Tells her that she can't have the house, and then eventually reneges on that, and then she has to buy the house from him. It becomes a whole thing, but she has the money and she does it. Congratulations to her. But she has to go back and try to play Borgov again.
Indeed.
And she loses again.
She does.
And this sends her into another tailspin. And so by this point, she's really developed a pretty strong dependence on alcohol as a coping mechanism. She's really incapable of just drinking one drink.
Yeah.
It snowballs. It becomes 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 drinks. And then she's dancing in her living room.
And passing out.
To music that's not there. And then waking up and then go buying more alcohol and doing it all over again for like 3 days straight. And then it's chess time and she focuses on chess and her drugs.
And somehow still dusts the floor with these players.
And so the last time she's played Borgov, she actually goes to Russia. Mm-hmm. It's the big leagues now.
It is.
She has to play against all of the best Russian players on her way up to playing Borgov. And so what she realizes is that as she is playing these Russian players, the Russian players are then going with Borgov and breaking down her game and showing him essentially how to beat her.
But it doesn't work.
So she's trying to figure out, it's not working. The first game, this is the third game match between them now. She's beat everybody else. Mm-hmm. And it's getting tight. And so she goes back to her hotel room. She doesn't know what to do. And she gets a call from basically every person that's ever helped her with chess up until this point.
That's true.
And they all are like, we've been listening to the game. This is what you do. And so they give her the playbook for how to beat Borgov. And then, long story short, there's more things that happen, but she finally beats Borgov. And that's how the movie ends.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And there's this beautiful ramp up of a fanship that she's developing in Russia. And after she wins this last game against Borgov, of course, her escort security guard person.
CIA.
Was it the CIA?
Yeah, CIA agent.
Ah, that makes sense. He's like, yeah, okay, let's hop on the plane. Let's, hit these appearances and get back to America. And she hops out the limousine. And she's like, I'll walk. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you're going to miss your flight. And you see the last scene. She walks into the park where there are these wonderfully seasoned elders sitting with their chessboards. And they all recognize her because she's just beat, the world champion Borgov. And it ends with her sitting down to play a game of chess with one of these older citizens.
Yes.
And it was wonderful. So there is the summary. But Malcolm, what made this show so awesome?
Great casting. Let's start there. Great casting. The lead actress, I don't remember her name, but she was also in Split.
She was. I keep forgetting that.
Yes, she was the main girl.
Anya Taylor-Joy.
She was great in the movie, just showing the complexities of her character as, an orphan who overcame so much to get to where, but she was constantly overcoming things.
She was very much in the process of overcoming. But Anya has this way of holding the camera's gaze that, like, every actress can't have that many close-ups. And she just, like, wow. The subtleties,
the
eyes, her facial expressions. She's really good at directing the audience to what to look at with her gaze.
Yeah.
So it was just, just very well casted. And so what I appreciated, though, is that I think there was this, kind of this eccentricism of her character, of Beth as the person. And I appreciated that the writer didn't I don't know how to say it, but they didn't make it awkward. They didn't how some shows are beginning to kind of intensify the this character is quirky and they don't socialize the way other people do, and it's sometimes people are just medium awkward, and that's okay. So I appreciated that they didn't make that extra awkward. I don't know if that makes sense. But you can tell that the amount of trauma that she had gone through had put this distance between her and everyone else, which was understandable. I mean, her mom clearly had some mental health obstacles that she was overcoming that also contributed to her mom's death. So she didn't really trust anybody. Chess was the only thing that she trusted. So I thought that was poetic. It was kind of a dark, poetic element of the show.
I think distance is something that's pretty common. I mean, a common storyline throughout the movie. She was skeptical of people, didn't trust a whole lot of people, and so in every relationship that she somewhat developed, there was a point where they tried to get closer, and she kind of pulled back.
Absolutely.
Like whenever she failed or lost, she's like, people are like, well, let's come, and she's like, no,
I need to be
myself.
Yeah.
And so you kind of see this theme of her isolating herself and feeling the pressure to figure out in the chess world how to beat this. In the real world, she's got to figure out how to provide for herself. She's got to figure out how to get to Russia. And so it's worked for her up to a certain point, but when it came to playing Borgov, she couldn't do it by herself anymore.
Yeah.
She was fighting against something that was beyond her ability. And so it was really, for me, one of the beautiful parts of the movie is when all of her people that have taught her anything about chess up to this point, and that were still alive, called her and said, this is how you do it. And basically they had their own version of what Borgov was doing with the people that played against her. And so it kind of showed we can only do but so much by ourselves. No matter how talented we are, no matter how great we are, there's a ceiling, and you can't do it by yourself.
Even for the greatest.
Yeah.
Because she is essentially the greatest chess player ever.
Yeah.
And you see, I think that was a very redemptive subplot of the show, because the first time that she encounters Benny Watts, who is this, I believe he came from New York, Texas.
He's from New York.
New York. Started playing chess when he was like in the womb, and he approaches her at one of her tournaments, and he's like, hey, can I give you some pointers? This is what I think you should have done differently. You should like walk it through, go back to your room and walk it through on the chessboard. She's like, no, I don't want to. So you can see this like immediate, I don't trust you. I don't know you.
Right.
But at the end, he's the one who actually initiates the call with all of these people on the phone who have watched her progress throughout her career. He's the one who makes that call. He brings everyone together. So it's a very redemptive, like, Beth goes from pushing everyone away to finally embracing that she does need other people.
And even like the relationship with her mother probably needed her more than she needed.
Oh, absolutely.
Her. And so that relationship was allowed to be close because, okay, she needs me.
I think so, but I'm glad that you brought that up, because I felt very skeptical of her mom, because Mrs. Wheatley obviously was going through a very tough time. Her husband just left her. But you could see the way that she was exploiting Beth a little bit to go on all these trips as Beth was going on these tournaments. I was like, I could feel myself bracing for her mom to like do something really just jacked up to Beth. But she never, they really developed this, I don't know, maybe it is codependent, but it was a beautiful relationship where Beth understood that she needed her mom. She developed a very beautiful emotional relationship with her mom, and mom needed to be needed by Beth.
Yeah. I mean, you saw, I can't remember if it was the first Borgov match or some other match where she's looking for her mom in the crowd.
Yeah.
And she doesn't show up, and she eventually loses the match. Yeah. But you could see like, okay, now this is becoming where it looks like Beth's mom needs her, that they both need each other.
They do, yeah. And I think that's the first time that Beth really allowed that to happen. She didn't even let that happen with her best, I would say her best friend Jolene at the orphanage. However, we do see that friendship develop beautifully.
Well, I think that relationship was a little different, because I think she's still, I don't know how to describe it, but I still feel like, so everyone else, especially in the chess world, is below her at some level.
Yeah, she didn't have any peers really.
But this is like the only real peer relationship that she has. Like,
oh, with Jolene.
Like there's a term that's used specifically in Black culture, but big broing somebody. And it's not necessarily a negative thing, but like I'm big bro, that's little bro. He knows how it works, and that's really the only person.
Yeah, that's
that can
true.
Like big bro her, that she can be like, yeah, she took care of me.
Yeah.
She took care of me when I was at the orphanage. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know what to do.
But I don't think Beth realized it.
I don't think it's a conscious thing.
Right.
But you could see it in their dynamic.
Absolutely.
She's the only person that really, I hate to use this word, but she submitted to just like,
yeah.
Everybody else is kind of like, all right, look, even when these chess players who in their own world are really good, but are still not good enough, as good as Beth in America, they try to help her. She's like, I just beat you. Why would I listen to you?
Right.
And there's that first exchange. She's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, you can help me.
You're right.
But there's no moment with that with Jolene.
There isn't. Yeah, that you make a good point.
Even after they've been separated for all these years and Jolene comes back to check on her, she's still like, this is still Jolene. Like, this is still the girl, the older girl that helped me in the orphanage.
But it was interesting because Jolene, I don't think... I don't want to draw that harsh of a distinction, but there was a conversation between them in the gym, I guess, where Jolene offers to pay a bit of Beth's way to get to the tournament in Russia, and Beth says, "Jolene, you're my guardian angel," and Jolene's like, "Whoa, no!" Like, there was a time when me and you, like, all we had was each other. And I would think that if I were to need you for something, you'd do something for me. And now you need me for something and I'm doing something for you. Like, this is family. This is what we do.
Yeah.
And so I think in that moment, it really clicked for Beth. It became conscious, that dynamic.
But there was also a tension in that moment.
You think so?
Because there's not, up to that point, she is not a pay it forward person. Like, even remember the scene where she is going back, basically starting over her road to get back to whatever the international competition is. And she's playing in that local competition. And the girl that she played, her very first competitive match, comes up to her. It's like, oh my gosh, I just wanted to see you again. And da-da-da-da-da-da. And she's just kind of like, okay. She's like, but what I'm saying is that she doesn't, whatever trait or personality piece that you need to like be able to like be nostalgic or to like, oh, this means something to this person. Like, I should like really lock it. She doesn't have it. And so in that moment, she didn't really know how to respond to what she said, because in her mind, she's like, oh yeah, I would probably do this for Jolene, but I've never done this for anybody. So would I really?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of tension there. Because she's coming to a realization about herself, like, oh crap, every relationship I've ever had, when it came time, I didn't step up, or I pushed them away, or whatever.
Yeah.
But this is like a real relationship that I need to like salvage.
I think that was a turning point for her.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think she may not have even done it in that moment with Jolene, but she began to make the turn to understand that, like, oh, there's some reciprocity that relationships need. Because when she finally reunites with the one chess player, Towns. Oh, Towns was a complex subplot. She has a crush on Towns, and Towns, he's not attracted to her sexually.
Because he's gay.
Well, no, I think he's gay. I was trying to remember if he said he was. There was a part of the conversation with her where he either said I was confused or I was exploring or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so maybe, bisexual, gay, either way. He didn't want a sexual relationship with her. And they reunite, and there's a moment where he asks her for forgiveness, but also says, like, you kind of broke my heart because I wanted a friendship with you. And she was like, yeah, I have a tendency to do that to people. And that was like one of the first out loud moments of introspection. I mean, she'd had a few beforehand, but you see this pattern developing in her where she's able to acknowledge how she's affecting people, and, there's reciprocity. She's being vulnerable. And I think it began in that moment with Jolene in the gym.
So one more thing I want to talk about this movie before we pivot,
the show,
is, what was the janitor's name? Mr.
Scheibel.
Mr. Scheibel. This man we see is really kind of like the unofficial father for Beth, right? Yeah. Introduces her to this game that she ends up loving and just gives all of her energy.
All of it.
All of her energy toward. And after she leaves the orphanage, well, let's back it up a little bit. So she helps her, like, takes her to this, is it a high school, like, chess club?
Yeah.
Where she plays all of the high school
at the same time.
And just beats them all. And she's, like, 10 years old at this time, like, just demolishing them. And so that kind of, like, enters her into this world. And they take this picture together, this article about her. And so fast forward, Jolene comes to see her at her house and lets her know that Mr. Scheibel passed away.
Yikes.
So they go to the funeral. It's very sparsely attended. Not a whole lot of people there. And they pull up to the orphanage. Like, hey, do you want to go inside? She's like, nope, I never want to go inside there. And so somehow she ends up actually going inside, going down into the basement, and goes through the basement where she learned how to play chess, and sees, just looking around, I don't know if she's even looking for anything specific, but then she turns around and sees this wall where Mr. Scheibel has kept every news clipping about her, every match she's won, every award she's won, every article she's ever been in. And there's a picture from the newspaper article that they did together about her being this chess prodigy. And she looks at that picture and she just breaks down. Finally breaks down.
Yo.
And she starts to realize that she meant something to him, that he wasn't just another one of these people in her life.
Yeah.
And so this is a really beautiful moment where you see her, like, even more so than losing her adoptive mother. This felt more like the loss of a parent.
Oh yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
This was like my father in chess. Like,
yeah, because she didn't even. I mean, when she lost her mom, you could see that she quite overtly repressed.
Yeah, she
just went straight into drinking.
Yeah,
but with this, she crumbles into Jolene's arms and just cries. And I would imagine that she's embracing the feeling of being loved by.
Yeah.
Mr. Scheibel, and she didn't realize it until
in a relationship that offered him nothing
in return.
She didn't do anything for him. She didn't give him he didn't get any notoriety out of this or anything. But this guy still followed her and loved and had love for her and cared for her even after she was gone. And I think that was really a big turning point for her.
Oh yeah.
Because there's really I don't think she believed in selfless relationships.
Oh no. Why would she?
Everybody wanted something. Like, even some people that helped her in chess also were attracted to her. So it was like
everything was an exchange.
Yeah. And so this was something that he just gave to her, and that was he only gave and didn't ask anything of her.
And this is what I appreciate about the writing, because the writers did this on two levels, right? You see the selflessness in, like, Mr. Scheibel, he didn't ask anything of her in return, and you see this very vulnerable moment where she realizes his love for her. But there was also a tangible example, because years before, when she was heading to her very first tournament in Kentucky, she mails him a letter asking for $10. And she says, I'll pay you back, once I win. And that letter was on this board next to the picture that she found of those two.
Yeah.
And it's like, he never, mailed her back like, hey, yo, where's my money? Run me my $10. And so you see this letter next to this picture, and it's like, wow, like, this man wanted nothing in return for me. So that was just like, oh, yeah.
So that brings us to the next topic that we're talking about. And that's mentorship.
Oh,
obviously Beth had a mentor.
Whether she knew, well, I guess she did know.
Maybe, yeah. Who helped kind of help her find her passion and then help her develop it in the early stages. But the question we want to ask is mentorship in this current generation, in this current world, dead?
That is the question we want to ask.
So, Micah, let's start here before we get to that ultimate question. What are the factors that are leading to the possibility that mentorship may be dead?
First off, very well phrased. I mean, I wouldn't expected that. I was like, oh, okay, it's a good question. So I was thinking about this, like, why does it seem like mentorship is dying? And I would say the first factor that comes to mind is that we've commodified knowledge. Like, you don't get knowledge for free nowadays. And so mentorship, I mean, that's the act of developing a relationship with someone who knows less than you.
Yeah.
And you're basically saying, I'm going to give you this knowledge for free. That don't work in this current world. You know, you have to be either extremely wealthy and you just have a bunch of knowledge to just spare without getting paid for it, or you really sacrifice something valuable by freely giving your knowledge to someone. So I would say that's definitely a factor.
I think another factor is we are more connected yet less connected than we've ever been. Like, you know, obviously we have social media and cell phones, but that's not genuine connection.
And I wouldn't say it's emotional connection in most situations.
Well, I think genuine connection is emotional.
Yeah.
At a certain level. So I think in a way we develop a lot of relationships that are not as close as we think they are, or are closer, or are not as, what I originally said. They're not as close as we think they are. They're a lot more fragile. And when it comes down to it, we're not, that deep connection isn't there. Yeah. And I think that's a necessary part. Real experiences, real interactions, real conversations. Yeah. And that's hard to have if you don't have a genuine connection.
And a connection that has some resilience to it. Because I think with mentorship, the mentor in a lot of ways is helping the mentee manage the emotions of learning a skill or, you know, a skill set. And so if you have this purely transactional way of interacting with most of the people in your life, which a lot of us do. I mean, like you said, we have this small kind of subset of relationships that are genuine and deep. And then most of our relationships are about the exchange. So if you don't have that depth, if you don't have that resilience, then, you know, if your mentee misses a meeting or they don't take a piece of your advice, or, you know, it can be easy to be like, oh, okay, well, you don't really want this, or you don't really value the knowledge that I'm giving you for free. So you can find another way to learn your knowledge. Yeah.
I'd also say I don't think it's a requirement, or it's not always the case, but the majority of mentorship relationships happen across a generation gap. Like there's one person that's a Gen X, and there's somebody that's baby boomer, whatever. Right. And I think, and I've said this to you before, I don't think there's a bigger generation gap than our millennial generation and the generation before us. I don't think there's been a bigger, whether it's, you want to call it social, emotional, but whatever that gap is, it's bigger than it's ever been.
And it's not even years necessarily.
It's not, but it's mindset.
Mindset, knowledge, like how we understand the world. Yeah. Like the world that millennials grew up in is so different because it moves so much faster than their parents and their grandparents' world. Yeah. So I would agree with you.
And so I think that has left a lot of baby boomers, I don't want to say unwilling, but very hesitant to mentor people in the next generation because they don't understand. They don't understand it. And I think so much of the things that we value and so many of the things that are important to us are just not important to them, and they don't understand that.
Yeah, there's very different
And some
values.
of it is maybe even direct conflict with what their values are. And it's like, well, I don't even want to do it.
I don't have time or the energy to do it.
And so one thing that I've experienced growing up was there was this desire from people in our generation to be like, we want to be active, we want to be involved, we want to be in leadership, we want to be able to do the work. But the generation behind us are in front of us, however you want to picture it in your mind, is like, well, you need to wait your turn. Yeah. It's like, well, why?
And we never got the answer. Or it was just, you're too young, you don't have enough experience.
Or it's just because I said so. And that's like, for our generation, that's like, we're trying to figure this out. Yeah. Like, we look at like the things that we faced in our generation before we've turned 40, and it's like we're trying to figure this out as we go along, and it's unprecedented, the things that we've had to deal with. But we are always asking questions like, why? Why do we do things that way? but constantly like being told the status quo is the norm. And so I think that's a big part of it too, is that those cross-generational relationships are harder because that gap is so wide between the two.
I agree. Yeah. And I would even say, I don't think baby boomers or even older Gen Xers are sitting in a room somewhere saying, we're going to hoard knowledge.
Absolutely
we're
not.
never going to tell blah, blah, blah. But I think there's a feeling of, like the world that millennials and Gen Zers are trying to navigate is so foreign that I think Gen Xers and boomers are like, I don't really know what to tell you, you know, so you guys figure it out. But I haven't experienced a lot of honesty either from those two generations where they're just willing to say that. Yeah. A lot of times it comes across as, you know, us millennials and, you know, our younger Gen Zer counterparts, you're arrogant, you think you know everything. And it's like, no, I mean, we tried to ask you guys for some guidance and we didn't really get that. So we're just trying to figure it out on our own. Yeah. So what I'm beginning to see is mentorship, that we're trying to do something like that in our own generation. But what chafes against that is this culture of like busyness and almost the necessity to have like multiple streams of income just to like survive. So we don't have the emotional margin or just time to come alongside of our peers. And I think a lot of us want to. Yeah. I think in our culture, there's this generosity of knowledge that we're beginning to cultivate, but we just don't have, because we're so busy. And so many of us are paying, you know, ridiculous amounts of student loans, and we're, you know, just trying to chase the cost of living where we are. We just don't have time to mentor, even though we want to.
So as we wrap this up, what do you think are the most important elements of a mentorship relationship? So we saw this example in the movie, but in real life, what ingredients need to be there for a healthy mentorship relationship?
I mean, I can't help but say the generosity of knowledge. Like you can't be someone who hoards knowledge and be a mentor at the same time. But I would also say a mentor is someone who's willing to learn from their mentee, like what that mentee's culture is, what their way of thinking is, their values are, so that they can actually come alongside of the mentee rather than imposing on the mentee a way of thinking. So I would say those two things come to mind for me.
I think this is something that is the responsibility of the mentor, and we saw it in the movie, is you have to be willing to selflessly give. A mentorship relationship that is requiring something of the mentee, like you need to pay this back, that's not a mentor relationship, that's something else.
It's a business transaction,
right? It's something completely different. But as a mentor, you have to be willing to, like you said, be willing to freely give of the information, wisdom that you have. Not because you want them to shout you out or say that this is my father in the ministry or whatever. It has to be because you generally love this person and you want to see them. You don't want to see them fail. And I think that is another thing that's missing, is that I think people want people to make mistakes so that they can watch you fail and watch you learn from that, instead of learning from the wisdom that you can impart to people. And I think it is an absolute must. You have to be willing to give, even if it costs you something.
And it will.
If it costs you position, if it costs you influence, whatever, you have to be willing to give and give and give and give.
Yeah, and that takes humility. That takes an abundance mentality. Like you can't have a worldview that says there isn't enough notoriety to go around and be someone who's comfortable mentoring. Because the reality is that person, if you mentor well, probably they're going to be able to pass you up one day, and you have to be comfortable with that. So I think you're spot on. But I would also say, on a practical note, you have to have time. People who are, and I'm speaking to myself right now because I run myself ragged with so little margin in my day. There's no way I could mentor the way that I want to in most cases. So a mentor really has to be willing to say no to a bunch of stuff, more stuff than they probably want to, in order to make room for mentorship relationships, I think.
I think the other thing that I would say on the mentee side of it is that something I heard, this is going to be a really off the wall example, but I hope it makes sense. 50 Cent came up on Eminem's record label. And
I did not know that.
Yeah. And so one thing that he constantly says, if anybody asks him about Eminem, he says, if I'm ever on a track with Eminem, I'm never going to try to outshine him. He's the one who gave me the opportunity, and you'll never hear me try to outshine him, and you'll never hear me say anything negative about him.
There you go.
And so I think as mentees, there's a responsibility for us to still hold that person in esteem, no matter how high we get,
exactly,
no matter where we go, no matter what we accomplish. That person deserves an honor and reverence that is special.
Absolutely.
But that only works if the other elements are there to begin with. It doesn't work the other way.
Because if that mentee has had a relationship where they felt betrayed by the mentor, or they felt like it was a transaction, it's hard for them to have that honor. I mean, yes, it is still their responsibility, but it becomes harder to honor the mentor if they didn't really nurture them well. So it's this I think there's this interplay between all these ingredients.
I think there's a moment, bringing it back full circle to the Queen's Gambit, where she's in Russia and a reporter, I believe it might have been her friend, the reporter that was there, asked her, basically like, who's the player or person that you look up to the most, or who taught you the most about. And I think they all expect her to give one of these elite chess players' names. And she says, Mr. Scheibel.
Yep. And she said he's a janitor in such and such place.
But then she also said, make sure you actually put that in the article.
And she wasn't playing around. And I think the very first time she had a journalist come to her place, she was, raving about Mr. Scheibel, and they didn't put anything in there about him. And so she's grieving to her mom afterward about how they didn't mention anything about Mr. Scheibel. So there was this very beautiful reverence, like you said, that Beth had for Mr. Scheibel, because she recognized, like, I wouldn't be where I am had it not been for him.
Yeah. Is there anything else about mentorship we want to cover before we?
There's so much.
There's so much we could do. We could do a whole podcast just about this. But this is just a small, itsy bitsy part of the conversation, and so we'd love to hear from you guys.
Absolutely.
Let us know how you think about mentorship. What are some struggles that you've had? What are some positive examples that you've had of mentorship?
We'd love to hear the positives.
And also talk about the Queen's Gambit. What did you like? What didn't you like? Have you watched it yet? Did this make you want to watch it?
Go watch it.
So you can use the hashtag #TalkAboutIt, POD. You can also converse with us on Twitter.
In the Twitterverse.
I am at Malcolm M Music.
And I'm at Spoken Worship.
Yes. So you can tag us, use the hashtag. We'd love to continue this conversation beyond the podcast sphere.
Beyond the podcast sphere.
So, Micah, what did we learn today?
Well, we learned that the Queen's Gambit was a masterful. That was a very important lesson. But we also talked about some factors that make mentorship difficult in this day and age, and what factors make it work. So can't wait to hear how you all continue this conversation. I have been Micah Morgan.
And I'm Malcolm Morgan.
And can't wait to see you next time.
Yep. This is Let's Talk About It. See y'all later.